What is up, guys? It's me, Pocket, and welcome back to the channel for week 2 of a healer attempting to play a tank. Our goal is to hit 2500 IO for the very first time while playing a tank class, and obviously we're here playing as a bear tank. And I do just want to give a shout out to you guys for all the likes, comments, and subscribes from the last video. It really means a lot, especially coming from just a small little tiny YouTuber and streamer like myself. So thank you guys so much. Alright, so let's get started on week 2 of our Zero to Hero challenge. So put the key in, hold timer, and let's go. Alright guys, so if you missed last week, don't worry about it. We managed to make it to an IO of 952 and an item level of 591. And to be honest with you, it was a little rough. We did tons of things wrong, we had no idea what we were doing, but you know, we managed to make it through. Our highest time key was a +5, the Dawnbreaker, which went fairly smooth. So other than that, it's just a big learning experience. So naturally, we're gonna start off this video by opening our vault. But we're actually not going to look at that just yet. I realized that because I wasn't opening it on a Tuesday, I wanted to run a raid first before I opened my vault, because I didn't want to pick an item that then I was just going to replace when I was at raid. So we're actually going to go ahead and jump in raid first, and then we'll go back to the vault opening. So raiding last week was a little rough, and we actually ended up going into a 2-2-6 group, so a 10-man team rather than jumping into like a really big team. And again, this is just 100% pugged right here. To be honest, I was hoping this was like kind of a more experienced team where we could just quickly blow through the entire raid real quick, get loot, and, you know, carry on with our day. Now, it wasn't as bad as last week, but you could tell that not everyone here knew exactly what was going on, which is fine. It's only normal, not a big deal. I'm still learning as a tank, so I'm not expecting, like, you know, a miracle or anything. We managed to make it 6 out of 8 in the raid, and I only managed to grab the trinket off the first boss here. Other than that, didn't get anything, which was kind of unfortunate. But you know, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So once out of raid, we're hopping right back to where we were, and that is to our vault. Some decent upgrades all around, just because we do have low item level and everything, but we decided we're just gonna go ahead, grab our headpiece here, and just grab Forset. At the end of the day, I think that's just going to be the best thing to do, and then once we start getting a Mythic Plus and stuff, and we can just start replacing our gear from here on out. I still think we have some blue champion gear and adventure gear that we need to replace. And just in case you DPS players were wondering how long it takes for a tank queue, well, here you go. Yep, so we get immediately invited into a +2 City of Threads, and that's going to be our very first warm-up key. I know we did a +5 last week, but I haven't played this character in a few days, so we are just going to get warmed up here. Plus, it's going to be IO for us either way, so it's a win-win situation. And this week, we do have the affix that spawns the little orbs. And I do just want to say this is probably by far my least favorite affix out of all of them. I hate doing it this week, just because sometimes, and I'm sure you guys know, sometimes those orbs just spawn in just places that you can't actually get them. And no, it is not worth sacrificing your life to go get some of these orbs. I have seen people die for orbs, guys, it's not worth it, don't do it. It wasn't too rough here, but this boss, for example, sometimes when you're in that movement phase, the orbs can spawn, and it's just almost impossible to even grab those orbs without risking your life to grab them. And especially on last boss, the Siege of Borealis, where the orbs just spawn in the water and go directly to the boss, and he just gets buffed every time. There's nothing you can do about it. The warm-up key does go decent though, not too many problems. We're going to get 172 points out of this. And on top of that, we are going to get a new neck piece. And that is going to replace our 525 Lariat from last season, last expansion. Probably a little bit too much crit as a bear. However, it's 70 item levels higher than what we have, so of course we're going to equip it. And that's going to bring us up to 596 item level, and we also get the War Within Superior achievement out of it. And yes, my friend, we need the neck. And in between, we are just going to spend a little bit of time upgrading some of our gear, using some flight stones and some of the lower tier crests and stuff like that. And I'm all about upgrading the gear. I know some people are like, don't want to waste their stones or crests. You know, honestly, I don't really care. We're just going to upgrade, and you know, we're just going to get better as we go. So the next key we're going to be hopping into is going to be a +2 Siege of Morales. Once again, nothing too difficult. We haven't timed this one at all either, so this is the first time we're in here. And I do want to bring up, some people left some comments in the last video saying that I should be keeping an average of 7 stacks of Ironfur up. Guys, honestly, be straight with me. Is that reasonable? Because for the most part, I usually have up between 3 to 5. Getting up to 7, I only have if I'm like in Incarn, and usually I'm up to like 10 or something in Incarn, because that is a little bit more reasonable. But outside of cooldowns, like, should I be having 7? Because I feel like that's really hard to get up to. Other than that, though, we are going to successfully time this key. It went very smooth. We got the 2 chests on it, and I think at this point, you know, I am almost 600 item level. Like, +2 should be fairly easy. And to be honest with you, like 600 item level when I play one of my healers, I would feel confident going into like a +7 or a +8 key. But I'm not gonna lie, even with 600 item level, like a +5 still seems kind of scary for me. But we're gonna get 177 points out of that, bringing us up to a total score of 1,301. But we got loot last time, so you know how it is. We got loot the last dungeon, so of course, no loot this dungeon. Imagine getting back-to-back loot, that'd be insane. So the next key that we've jumped into is a +4 Grim Batol, and last week we tried a +6 Grim Batol that we ended up failing, so I have tanked this one a little bit, so it shouldn't be too bad. And as we go, I'm going to be sharing some of the stuff that I've been learning as a tank, so if you're kind of new, you might not know these things, but if you're kind of a veteran, you're going to be like, yeah, Pocket, obviously that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say. Everybody knows that. Not true. Not everybody knows, okay, guys? So one thing that I've kind of been learning and I've kind of been doing is I will always, not always, I mess up sometimes, I forget. But for the most part, I will pop like a defensive cooldown at the beginning of every pull. As a tank, I've been learning that the tank is the most vulnerable at that very first initial pull because you don't have any other of your defensives worked up. I have 0 Ironfur. I don't have any rage other than what I get from the charge. So if I pop that initial defensive ability going into the pull, then I know I'm kind of safe for that little bit and I can start building up my Ironfur and stuff like that. And I know this is kind of the same way for DKs as well with their bone shield because I heal a DK a lot of the time. So I know like even a DK at the beginning of every pull is super squishy. And being a healer main, I see tanks a lot of the time save their cooldowns to when they're about to die. And I'm learning, and I think as a tank, you definitely need to be using your cooldowns, your defensives, proactively and not reactively. You want to try and rotate them quite often. Don't wait for something that bad happened to then use it, but you want to already be using it before that bad thing happens, if that makes sense. And feel free to leave a comment if I'm wrong. Everything that I say is opinionated, so my opinion might differ from yours. So, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different idea, you know, let's have a conversation. But I realized too, I have been saving my defensives way too much. Like, you know, how long are you in a dungeon for? And I think this dungeon, I might press Incarn 3 times. Incarn is on a 3-minute cooldown. We can definitely press Incarn more than 3 times the entire dungeon, and that is my best cooldown of all time on this character. And I've said this before in the past, and I'm gonna eat my own advice. But when learning anything new in WoW, whether it's, you know, a new class, new spec, whatever it is, use your cooldowns as often as possible, and then learn when to save them, rather than saving your cooldowns and learning when to use them, because you end up not using them that often. And again, that works for DPS, that works for healing, tanking, all the above. You want to get into the habit of constantly using your CDs, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I see as a player in WoW, watching new players and even kind of some more advanced players as well, is just watching them save their cooldowns, especially as a healer. You know, when we see somebody die and every single one of their defenses are still up, just small things like that. So again, I'm gonna try and eat my own advice and try and press my buttons way more often than I am now. Alright, so now jumping up to the 3rd boss here, I was told that I can take the boss and tank him all the way back in this corner right here, and it's super helpful for everybody. Now I know I did this once as well as a healer where my tank came and sat here in the corner and did exactly this, and I didn't have any issues, so I did the same thing now, and you know, I took the frontals and stuff, but I was pretty much keeping myself alive the entire time, so I think it's okay. Grim Batol is probably my least done key out of all time. For whatever reason, I just never see this key in queue, like nobody's running it. But is this, you know, what do you guys think? Do you see people doing this often? I mean, we do finish the boss without any issues, so I guess whatever works, works. But yeah, let me know if you guys see this at all. Alright guys, and we do end up timing the key. We actually get a +2 on it, giving us 216 points and bringing us up to a total of 1517. And the key was super smooth. I mean, we only had 1 death through the entire thing. And we actually do end up walking away with this ring. The Demon Hunter won it, and then ended up trading it to the Rogue, and then the Rogue realized he didn't want it, so he ended up trading me. So eventually we do get this ring. Next key we're jumping into is a +4 Arakara, and if you remember from last week, we have been here before. Last week we ended up going to the last boss with 12 minutes left on the timer, and then proceeding to constantly wipe over and over again and breaking the key. So hopefully this time goes a little bit smoother. Alright guys, and just for fun, we're going to play a little game called Whose Fault Was It? Alright, so if you look to the left of me, you'll see a pool on the ground. I purposely moonfired that guy, so he drops a pool. As I run to it, the Rogue then snatches the pool out from under me, and I die. The Rogue actually did apologize and say sorry for stealing my pool, so I'm gonna go ahead and blame it on him. Not my fault. But we do run it back, killing the boss, still getting the +2, only getting 34 points, because I think we already had an untimed +4 in this, so. But what we really could use is the trinket. Just like everybody else, we could really use the trinket out of here. And guess what we get? The wrong trinket. So apparently Sack Brood is like S-tier trinket for bear tanking. I need to look up if I have to be in a different spec to actually get that trinket as a tank. So I think that's why we didn't get it, which is really unfortunate, because if I was like in Farrell's spec for loot, I might have gotten the trinket. Now we're gonna have to do it again. All right, so now we're gonna be jumping into a +4 Necrotic Wake, still keeping it around the +4 area. You know, we're still trying to get gear, crests, and not flight stones, valor stones, sorry, just to make sure our gear is stable and, you know, practicing the dungeons and rotations as well. And I also got a few comments from the last video saying, hey Pocket, make sure you use Incarn before the dungeon starts. And I'm not gonna lie guys, up until this point, I completely forgot to use Incarn the entire time. But in this key, and in this moment, I remembered to use Incarn. And we're gonna use it right before, so we can do this 3-pack pull, and then still have Incarn up for later. But I pop Incarn, and so does the Moonkin, and proceeds to pull everything. The one time I remember to use Incarn, so does the other guy. Now it's on cooldown, and you know, we have to kill this pack before we can start the key, because you can't start the key in combat. And now at this point, guys, I've been tanking a little bit, you know, not a whole lot. I'm not a pro, I'm not a professional or an expert or anything, but I do want to share with you so far my biggest gripe as a tank. Now, I will say my biggest gripe as a healer is, of course, when people stand in mechanics. That is the most annoying thing as a healer. Like, stop standing in mechanics, just move. I have now found my biggest gripe as a tank. It doesn't happen here, but many times when you do a large pull, similar to like a 3 or 4 pack at the beginning of some of the dungeons, you know, you usually do a big one with all your CDs and lust. Guys, I have 0 sympathy if you die. I have 0 sympathy if you are a DPS player and you pop all your cooldowns and you don't let the tank get aggro on things first and you fall over dead. Can we please just give the tanks like 3 to 5 seconds so they can gather everything out, get some aggro before you just go berserk on all the ads? Oh my goodness, guys, you're gonna do way more DPS just waiting 3 to 4 seconds than you are dead on the ground. Come on. Anyways, it's happened a couple times. Not really a big deal, but again, it's something that I've seen that's just like, just chill, guys. Come on. And I also go straight up panic mode as a tank, trying to like pull everything and try and get the aggro, and then hopefully the guys don't cleave and I'm not running around cleaving everybody. It's a pain in the butt. And we get through the key completely flawless. 0 deaths, a lot of good time. We ended up getting the +2. We had already timed this key on like a +3 previously, so we're only gonna get like 26 points out of it. But you know, super smooth. It's gonna bring us up to a total of 1577. Unfortunately though, we are not going to get any loot out of this. If you notice too, this rogue, who is a pug, wanted to join me because when we did the first dungeon, which I think he was in the Grim Patrol with me, he's like, hey, you're a good tank, can I just stick around with you? So at least I'm not doing terrible. There's one person in the world that thinks I'm good. Alright, so now we're gonna step up the difficulty a little bit and jump into a +5 City of Threats. And leading up to this point wasn't too bad. I mean, we did have 6 deaths, but Okay, you know, it's actually not good at all. Having 6 deaths this early on is not good. But it's not as punishing because we don't have that 15-second affix, just the 5-second one. But we do get to this boss, and, you know, these orbs, just everyone keeps getting hit by them. First one to go down is going to be the rogue there. Gets stunned by an orb and then gets hit by the frontal. Next is me, but not my fault. The mage blinks out of the circle here, hits me with his orb, I'm stunned, and then I get hit by the tank buster and I die. Not my fault. And then that's it, guys. We call it there. You know, you can have a perfect route, perfect percent, but as a tank, you know, if people don't do the mechanics, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So that does end up being our first bricked key, which honestly isn't too bad, especially when you're kind of doing these lower keys. I feel like you tend to brick more of the lower keys than you do in the high to mid range. And by high, I mean like 10, not like 12s, you know. And after that +5 bricked key, we're gonna go ahead and jump into a +5 stonefall. And so far, so good. We're going up to the second boss here, and with only 1 death, so once again, doing pretty good. So this boss here, I feel like is one of those bosses that people are constantly complaining about, and really when they refer to keys being hard than they ever have been, this is probably one of those boss fights that definitely is way more difficult than anything that we've seen in the past. For example, every single mechanic in this fight is very important, to include the kick. That kick has to be kicked every single time. Now, is it possible to do it without getting the kick? Sure, but it just makes it so much harder because it does ticking damage, and then on top of that, it slows you down. So if you are the ranged player in your group, your job is to make sure that that guy gets kicked every single time he jumps away. That is not only going to help your team because you're not going to be slowed, it's going to help your healer because they're not going to have to deal with that ticking damage as well. Because having that on you while you're trying to heal through that big blast is also very difficult, again, coming from a healer. So the boss fight wasn't going terribly, but we had to move for the burning vents, and this is kind of where we lose a whole bunch of people right here. We missed the kick again, that's going to kill some people, I end up dying, and that's it for that one. We run it back again, but I end up dying here in the tank buster. I'm gonna take that one. I should have had a defensive up, and I did not. I try and take the B-res, and I think I'm out of the circle, or sorry, out of the square, and I just immediately die because it has me on top of that big square, which is an instant kill, because that circle won't kill you unless it goes off if you're inside of it. So I waste a battle res there and immediately die. So we do end up running it back for a 3rd time. It's probably not timeable, maybe. Like if we end up playing perfectly from here on out, we might be able to time it with 17 minutes, but fortunately that's not going to happen because we go ahead and lose the monk right there during that blast, and then we lose the shaman right here because he stayed in the vent too long, and as we're running back, he's going to go ahead and pull the big block into the middle and kill our paladin. So there goes, yep, that's the key, guys. We end up dying here, and we end up not finishing the key. So that is where we end up calling it for week 2, ending at a total score of 1577, IO score, and then an item level of 600. And once again, I feel like if I was on a healer, item level 600, I could be doing 7s and 8s, no problem. But the tank, you know, we're still learning. So thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching and coming with me on this journey as I learn to tank. And I do appreciate, once again, all the likes, subscribes, follows, all that good stuff. Really appreciate that. And we will see you guys in the next one.